back to stop and frisk policies and proactive policing. So the fact is, in the United States, crime rates between 1960 and 1994 spiked dramatically in major cities across the country. In the early 1990s, a lot of cities began to use proactive policing in order to lower crime rates. And the United States underwent one of the greatest crime transformations in history. We lowered our murder rate dramatically in major cities across the country. Okay, and that was because of proactive policing and broken windows policing and CompStat and yes, policies like stop, question, and frisk. And these were applied in bipartisan fashion. Right? Mayor Giuliani became Mayor Giuliani because David Dinkins wasn't going to do any of this stuff. Mayor Richard Riordan in LA became Mayor Richard Riordan because Democrats in LA were not doing this sort of stuff. The attempt to clean up crime was one of the major American success stories between 1994 and 2015, when there was sort of a reverse effect after some of the Ferguson riots and the so-called Ferguson effect, where police started backing off out of fear that they were going to ruin their lives and careers if they engaged in proactive policing. Well, this was a bipartisan coalition that favored lowering crime. And that bipartisan coalition included a lot of black legislators and a lot of black city council members who were sick of watching high crime neighborhoods affecting black people who are living in those high crime neighborhoods. Okay, so that's the backdrop to all of this. So Michael Bloomberg's great success story in New York City really is that he was able to continue lowering crime. And that's the only reason he can run for president. If he had not lowered crime, he'd be like Mayor Bill de Blasio, who had a complete failure of a campaign. Right? Mayor Bloomberg's basic pitch is, I made the city of New York safer. I helped continue the transformation of Times Square from what was a squalid cesspool into a pretty nice place to be. You can take your kids, you can walk around. It's kind of like Disneyland. Right? And that is Bloomberg's pitch. But he's had to run directly away from that pitch because he's running directly into the teeth of a bunch of the woke warriors who suggest that proactive policing is inherently racist. Okay, so he's at the Aspen Institute. Now, the piece of audio you're about to hear, we don't hear the beginning of the audio. The reason I think this is kind of important, honestly, is because you don't know, it was a Q&A session. You don't know what question he was asked. So the way that the audio sounds, it's like he's volunteering that they were targeting black people. And maybe that's what he said. And if he did say that, then he is expressing this all wrong, right, in very bad fashion. But if he was asked, which I have a feeling he was, why stop and frisk disproportionately affected black and Hispanic people, and he gave this answer, then the answer might be rough, but the answer is also based in fact, which is that the crime rates in the black and Hispanic community in New York City are dramatically higher than the crime rates in other areas of New York City. And this is why the police are in those areas, and this is why the arrest rates are disproportionate to population statistics. Okay, so here's what Bloomberg had to say at the Aspen Institute. It's got Bloomberg is racist trending, and we'll see if this has any impact on the race. See, I'm kind of doubtful that it does, honestly. Like, I'm kind of doubtful that you're going to see Bloomberg's support in the black community completely collapse in the same way that Trump's support in the Hispanic community did not completely collapse, despite the fact that he was saying all of these kind of ridiculous and egregious things about immigration generally and about Mexicans and all this stuff, because most people of Mexican descent who live in the country who support Trump are not off-put by the fact that Trump speaks in harsh language about illegal immigration. Most black people in America are not all, like, I think that the amount of black support for letting people out of prison who have committed crimes is way lower than the mainstream media would have you believe. I think the vast majority, I know the vast majority of black Americans are law-abiding people who want to live in safe communities. And so when they are told that the police are supposed to be out of their communities, the police are inherently bad and all of this, I don't think most black Americans believe that, which is why Joe Biden, who said a lot of similar things to what you're going to hear Bloomberg say right here, his support has not cratered with black Americans either. Here is Michael Bloomberg talking. This is supposedly the clip that's going to end his presidential bid.
Put those cops where the crime is, which means in minority neighborhoods. So it's one of the unintended consequences is people say, oh my God, you are arresting kids for marijuana that are all minorities. Yes, that's true. Why? Because we put all the cops in the minority neighborhoods. Yes, that's true. Why do we do it? Because that's where all the crime is. And the way you get the guns out of the kids' hands is to throw them up against the wall and frisk them.
Okay, now he's saying this in the roughest and dumbest possible fashion, is to get the guns out of hands. You throw them up against the wall and you frisk them. Well, or if you asked any police officer in New York City, you stop, you question, and you frisk, right? That is the actual legal language. So the minute-long excerpt, Bloomberg says 95% of your murderers and murder victims fit one MO. You can just take the description, Xerox it, and pass it out to all of the cops. Right, so this is why whether he was asked about the racial disproportion is sort of relevant to how he's answering. If he's defending the policy on the basis that it is disproportionate to the general demographic, then that's a problem. If he's defending the supposed disproportion on the basis of crime statistics, then he's saying it in rough fashion, but what he's saying is basically correct. Right, what he's saying is basically true on a factual level, which is that disproportionately the vast majority of crime victims, from murder to violent crime to robbery in the city of New York, are minorities. and the disproportionate number of perpetrators and suspects are members of these communities too. So who do you think that active policing is going to end up hitting more often? And this is also true for marijuana statistics. If you have more cops in high crime areas, and those high crime areas are disproportionately minority, then presumably disproportionately people who are smoking pot in front of the cops in those areas are going to be the ones who are arrested. When people say, well, why aren't the cops hanging out around Wall Street? Because there ain't street crime around Wall Street. That's why. Because the cops are where the street crime is. They are where the violent crime is. It's a completely different division that investigates white-collar crime. You want to up the white-collar crime element in New York City, you're not going to call NYPD when you see a white-collar crime, right? You're going to call a specific division, presumably, of the DOJ, right? You're not going to call, like, the beat cop. You're not going to flag down a cop car. You're not going to flag down a patrol car and be like, I saw a man engaging in insider trading in the elevator over on Wall Street. Now, that's not how any of that works, okay? And that's what Bloomberg is saying. He says that's true in New York. That's true in virtually every city. You want to spend the money to put a lot of cops on the street, put those cops where the crime is, which means in minority neighborhoods. Okay, well, that's awkwardly put, but that is true, which is that the crime is disproportionately in areas that have a disproportionate number of minorities. That just is the fact. Okay, so Bloomberg is getting excoriated for this. Facts don't care about your feelings, and it's a fact that The Ben Shapiro Show is the largest conservative podcast in the nation. Be sure to hit the subscribe button to stay up to date on all of our content.